Have you ever noticed how dating advice online can be like so different,
Yeah.
depending on if it's a guy or a girl asking for help?
Yeah.
It's almost like there are two totally different sets of rules.
Right.
Today, we're going deep into this Reddit thread that, well, kind of blew up over this very thing.
It's interesting, this whole double standard thing.
Yeah.
Like the original poster on AskMenAdvice, they pointed out this pattern
Okay.
where guys are told to, talk it out, work on the relationship. For
Yeah.
women, it's more like, dump him, just like that.
Yeah.
And the comments, oh boy, people did not hold back.
Not at all. One user even said they got banned for sticking up for a guy who wanted to break up with his girlfriend
What?
because she was, well, a prostitute.
Wow. Just for defending the guy.
Banned.
It makes you think, like, what's really going on in these online spaces,
Totally.
Is it about helping people, or is there something else at play?
And a bunch of users brought up misandry, like straight up hatred of men,
Oh,
especially on those women-dominated subreddits.
that's a thing for sure.
One person even said they got banned from 2 X chromosomes
Oh, wow.
just for calling out some of the stuff they were saying.
Hmm.
And then, get this,
What?
they reported a woman who was, like, encouraging violence against men,
Seriously.
and they got a temporary Reddit ban for that.
It's scary how sometimes these platforms can
I know.
become echo chambers for that kind of
Yeah.
negativity.
It's almost like they just assume the guy's always the bad guy.
Yeah.
Even when, maybe he's not.
Yeah, you see that a lot.
Like if a woman complains about her husband not doing chores, everyone jumps to he's lazy, dump him.
Mm-hmm.
But what if, like, he works crazy hours, or maybe they haven't even talked about splitting chores fairly?
It's true. You never get the whole story, right?
Exactly.
And it often feels like the go-to advice on Reddit is just get rid of them,
Yeah.
no matter what the situation is.
Like ripping off a Band-Aid instead of, actually dealing with the problem.
Totally. And some people were saying maybe this difference in advice is because, well, women often have more dating options.
Hmm.
So it's easier for them to just move on.
That's an interesting thought. Like, maybe if women are always told to leave at the first sign of trouble, then there's less focus on actually, like, working through those tough spots.
You think so?
I don't know, but are we missing out on some serious growth,
Yeah, maybe.
by always just taking the easy way out?
It's a good point.
This thread, it goes way beyond just the dump him versus talk it out thing.
Oh, yeah.
It digs into, like, specific double standards in all sorts of relationship advice.
Like what?
Everything.
Yeah.
Sex, chores, emotions, you name it.
Oh, I'm curious now.
For instance, a lot of people pointed out that women are often told to put their own needs first.
Yeah, that's common advice.
And if their partner's not meeting those needs, well, bye-bye.
Uh-huh.
But guys,
What about them?
they're told to be more, like, introspective, work on themselves.
It's almost like
I know.
there's this idea that women just deserve to have their needs met.
Automatically.
And men have to constantly prove themselves.
Totally. And then there's the whole thing about dealing with a partner's bad mood.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic one. Tell me about it.
Well, if a woman says her boyfriend's grumpy, everyone's like, give him space. Or maybe he needs therapy.
Okay.
But if a guy complains about his girlfriend being moody,
What happens then?
he's told he's being insensitive or that he needs to man up.
It's like women's emotions are just automatically valid,
Right.
while men's are just dismissed.
Like they don't matter.
It's not fair.
And it's not just moodiness, it's everything.
Really?
Past relationships, money problems, you name it.
Wow.
This thread was full of double standards.
It's like a crash course in how gender stereotypes mess with our ideas about relationships.
What I found really interesting, though, was that it wasn't just men pointing this stuff out.
Oh, really?
Lots of women were chiming in, too.
Yeah.
Saying they see the same patterns.
That's good, at least. It
Sure.
means it's not just a men versus women thing.
Exactly.
It's about recognizing that these double standards are harmful to everyone.
So before we dive into some specific examples,
Yeah.
what really stuck out to you from this first look at the thread?
Honestly, it's the sheer number of comments and how much emotion people poured into them. It's clear that this hits a nerve.
Yeah.
Like, people are feeling unheard and misunderstood when it comes to dating these days.
It really makes you think, behind all those usernames are real people.
Definitely.
Dealing with love, heartbreak, all of it.
And their experiences deserve to be taken seriously.
Absolutely. Makes you wonder how we can create online spaces that are more about empathy,
Yeah.
instead of just adding fuel to the fire with stereotypes and negativity.
I agree.
That's a perfect lead in to the next part of our deep dive. When we come back, we'll break down some of these double standards and how they affect real-life relationships.
Sounds good.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how the Reddit thread kept showing this pattern of assuming men are always the ones messing up in relationships.
Right.
It really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's something you see in so many ways. And this thread really brought it all out in the open.
For sure.
One area where it was super clear was in the advice about sex.
Oh, yeah.
Especially like who wants it more and who starts things.
The whole libido thing. Tons of comments about that.
Totally. Like if a woman wants to have sex more often, or if she's complaining that her partner isn't interested enough,
Yeah.
she's usually told to, be upfront about her needs, maybe even suggest couples therapy.
Yeah.
But if a guy says the same thing,
Oh, that's different. It's like he's being needy.
or putting too much pressure on her,
Right.
like guys should just always be ready to go,
Yeah.
no matter what.
It's crazy.
Makes me wonder if all these expectations are even realistic. I mean, we're not robots.
Exactly. And it's not just bad for the guy's ego.
It hurts the whole relationship.
Because if guys feel like they can't talk about this stuff without being judged, well, that leads to resentment, frustration.
Yeah.
The communication just shuts down.
For sure.
We need to remember that wanting sex, it goes up and down for everybody, guys and girls.
Absolutely. And we need to be able to talk about it openly without all the judgment.
Totally. And another area where those double standards were super obvious.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Chores.
Oh, the chore wars. Classic.
It was almost funny, the different reactions you'd see.
Tell me about it.
Like, if a woman complains about her boyfriend not helping around the house, the advice is always, you deserve better. Don't put up with that.
Right. Dump him, you queen.
It's all about setting boundaries and not being a doormat, which, is empowering in a way.
Yeah.
But then a guy says the same thing.
What happens?
Totally different story.
He's the bad guy now.
Big time. Like he's whining.
Or he's lazy.
Or controlling.
Or he's not a real man.
Seriously.
It's like we're still stuck in those old school gender roles.
Where the woman's supposed to do everything at home.
Exactly. And if a guy complains, he's somehow failing.
It's a no-win situation.
No.
If he doesn't help enough,
Yeah.
he's a jerk.
Right.
But if he says he wants things to be more fair, then he's controlling.
It's tough.
So what's the answer then?
Honestly, I think it comes down to talking.
Talking.
Yeah, like really being open and honest about what you need and what you expect.
With your partner.
Right.
Finding a way to split things that feels fair to both people.
Exactly.
Not about some rigid rule book.
Yeah.
It's about making it work for you and your partner.
And that reminds me of another big double standard we saw in the thread. Emotional labor.
Yeah.
All that invisible work that keeps relationships going. And it often falls on women, right?
Totally.
Like if a woman feels drained.
Because she's always managing her partner's emotions, planning everything, basically keeping the whole relationship afloat.
Yeah, in those cases, she's told to take care of herself.
Yeah.
To communicate her needs.
Which is good advice.
Right. Totally valid. But then what happens when a guy says he feels the same way?
What does happen?
People don't believe him.
Or they say he's just trying to get out of doing his part.
Exactly. Like his feelings aren't important.
It's that whole man-up thing again.
Yeah.
But bottling up emotions is bad for everyone.
So true. We need to stop thinking about masculinity in such a narrow way.
So guys can be open about their feelings.
Yes. And get support when they need it.
It's about realizing that emotional labor,
Yeah.
it's both people's responsibility.
Totally. And it's about creating a relationship where both partners feel seen and heard.
And supported. Okay, before we go any further, there's one more double standard I think we should talk about.
Okay, what's that?
The advice about past relationships. This came up a lot in the thread.
Oh, yeah.
And it was fascinating how different the advice was, depending on who was bringing it up.
Yeah.
It was really obvious. Like if a woman is feeling insecure about her boyfriend's past relationships, or even just his female friends, she's often told to work in her self-esteem, to trust her partner.
Don't let the past control the present.
Right. Which is good advice on its own,
But
when it's the other way around.
what happens then?
Total 180. If a guy expresses those same concerns about his girlfriend's past,
Oh, boy.
he's suddenly the possessive, controlling, maybe even abusive one.
Wow.
It's like people think women are always more trustworthy And guys,
Yeah.
well, their motives are always suspect.
It's like we're automatically judging these situations based on what we think men and women should be like.
Right. We're not even looking at what's actually happening.
And it ignores the fact that everyone brings their own insecurities into relationships.
It doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl.
Right.
And it creates this weird power dynamic where one person can talk about their worries freely
Yeah.
while the other one feels like they have to keep quiet.
That's not right.
So how do we fix that?
I think it all goes back to honest communication.
Okay.
Both people need to feel safe talking about their feelings without being judged.
Yeah.
And they both need to really listen to each other.
Try to understand where the other person's coming from.
Exactly. It's not about blaming anyone or sticking to these rigid gender roles.
It's about working together to build trust and understanding.
That's it.
It makes sense. Instead of pretending the past doesn't matter, we should talk about it.
Right.
Be open about how we're feeling.
And find ways to make each other feel secure in the relationship.
This whole thread really shows how deep these double standards go.
Definitely. And we've only just scratched the surface.
Right? There are so many examples.
It makes you wonder if it's just Reddit or if these patterns are everywhere.
What do you think?
I think it's everywhere. These expectations about gender and relationships are so ingrained.
So ingrained. It's hard to even see them sometimes.
Let alone challenge them.
So where do we go from here? If it's that deep-rooted, how do we even start to change things? So we're back, and I'm still thinking about all those double standards we talked about.
Me too. It's like, it's bigger than just some bad advice on Reddit, right?
Yeah, exactly. It makes you wonder, like, why do these double standards stick around? Is it just online, or does this happen in real life too?
Oh, it's definitely not just a Reddit thing. It's like woven into our culture.
Really?
We've got all these years of, traditional ideas about men and women, and those ideas, they totally affect how we think about relationships.
So it's like we're following these invisible rules
Exact.
about how guys and girls are supposed to act, even if we don't realize it.
Right.
And we're judging ourselves and everyone else based on those rules.
And even though we're trying to be more equal, it's hard to break free from those old ways of thinking.
So what can we do about it? If it's really that ingrained, how can we even make a dent?
It's tough, for sure, but I think the first step is just being aware of it. Like, once you see those biases, you can start to question them.
So it's about catching yourself when you're thinking in those old ways.
Yeah.
And asking yourself, am I being fair here? Or am I letting those stereotypes take over?
Exactly.
I know.
And talk to your partner about it, about what you both expect and need.
So we can start playing those old roles without even realizing it.
Right. Sometimes we need to step back and see the bigger picture.
And the good news is, we can totally change those rules.
We can write new ones.
Create relationships where it's really about equality and respect.
Absolutely.
Seeing each other as individuals, not just stereotypes.
And instead of jumping to dump him or talk it out,
Yeah.
we need to remember that real relationships are messy. They're complicated.
It's not always black and white.
Right. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just listen. Be there for each other.
And figure out what works for you as a couple.
Yeah.
Not for some imaginary rule book.
Exactly. Relationships are a journey, and you get to choose how you want to travel that road.
This whole deep dive has been eye-opening. It makes you think twice about how those double standards can sneak up on you.
It's a good reminder to stay open-minded, question your assumptions, and keep working towards better relationships.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little inspiring.